In this video, I'll show you how to crochet these beautiful bead trees without pre-stringing your beads. I'll show you how to add the beads as you crochet using any weight of yarn and any size of beads you have available. Hey there, I'm Jess from Make a Do Crew, and I love combining interesting textures like wood and leather into my crochet. If you do too, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more tutorials just like this. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using Lion Brand's Hue and Me, which is a category 5 bulky weight yarn, and I'm going to hold 2 strands together as I crochet. What you're looking for in the yarn that you use is the thickest possible yarn you can combine with the beads that you want to use. So in this case, these beads are a 20 millimeter bead, meaning that they're 20 millimeters across, and then the hole is 10 millimeters. You'll also want to have some of these styrofoam cones, which are available in every size imaginable, and a couple of stitch markers to mark your rounds as you crochet. The written pattern and links to all of these supplies, including the exact beads I'm using here, which you can buy on Amazon, it's all in the description box below. When you're choosing your supplies, one of the most important things to think about is making sure that your hook can enter the center hole of the bead, and especially that it can go through and pull the yarn through. So you need a little extra slack, but you can see there's not actually that much extra space in the center of my bead. I have found that this 10 millimeter hole combined with this hook, which is a US size M, that's 9 millimeters. It fits in there well, and some other 9 millimeter hooks I have don't fit in, but because of the shape of this hook, I find that this hook fits well in there. So it's just a matter of looking through your hooks and finding the largest hook size that can fit through your beads. And the reason you want the largest hook size is because ideally you're using a fairly thick yarn. This is going to help your trees work up faster and eliminate any gaps between your stitches. So this is what that looks like when we hold 2 strands of Hue and Me together and use these 20 millimeter beads. So I'm going to call this our larger tree, and this is what it looks like with only 1 strand of Hue and Me. So I didn't hold 2 together for this. Everything about this tree is a little bit more petite. You can see the beads are smaller and the stitches are smaller as well because there's only 1 strand of yarn here. For this, I used a size J hook, and you can tell these beads, they're smaller than the other ones. These beads are a 12 millimeter bead with a 6 millimeter hole. Again, the link to these is down below. What's important here is that they fit onto my hook, or rather my hook fits into my bead. So that's what you're looking for in your combination. You can really choose any beads and any yarn you want, using the chunkiest yarn you can find that will also fit through your bead hole. If you don't have any bulky weight yarn, you can hold 2 strands of worsted weight together like I did here, and that's the equivalent of 1 strand of bulky weight yarn like Hue and Me. So you can see this is looking similar to that 1 strand of Hue and Me version, and it's using the smaller beads, and it works up quite equivalently. We're going to get started with a magic loop, and you can see here I'm holding 2 strands of yarn together. That's because that's the thickness of yarn I want to create. You may just have 1 strand of yarn, or even maybe holding 3. I'm going to wrap my yarn around my hand like this. The working yarn is on top, and then the working yarn is right behind my loop here, so I can pick it up like this and then yarn over and chain 1. So I'm just pulling that loop through my hook, and now I've secured my magic ring and I have my working yarn right here, and we're going to use that to now work 4 half double crochet stitches into our magic ring. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once those stitches are in there, I can pull the tail of my magic ring and tighten it up. And now we're going to continue working in the round. We're working in a spiral in this pattern, which means that we don't need to join the round in any way. We just keep going around in a circle. And I am going to work 2 half double crochet stitches into my first stitch from the previous round. So I'm just yarning over and working those stitches without a chain or anything like that. We're just going right in, and we've got 1 stitch there and 2. And because we're working in a spiral, it can be really hard to see where our rounds start and stop. So we're going to put a stitch marker in the first stitch of our round, and then we're going to move it to the first stitch of each subsequent round. In the next stitch, I want to work 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochet in the next stitch. So this is the 3rd stitch of our round. One, 2, and then in the last stitch we are going to put 1 half double crochet. So we started with 2 half double crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochet, 1 half double crochet. So we should now have 6 total stitches, and we've arrived back at that stitch marker. So I'm going to pop it out and then replace it after I work the next stitch. In the next round, we're just going to half double crochet in each stitch around. And this could be a round where you decide to introduce a bead. This is sort of up to you, and the placement of these beads is going to be at your discretion as you crochet. So I'll give you a bit of a formula to follow that I like to think about for placement, but also it's just a matter of eyeballing it as you crochet and trying to sort of decide it's time to hang an ornament on your tree and add a bead as you're working each round. To begin round 3, I'm just going to half double crochet in that first stitch, and then I'm going to pop this stitch marker in here. And then, like I said, we're just half double crocheting in each stitch around. So I'm going to work 1 more stitch, and then I'll show you how we put a bead on whenever you feel ready to do that. So we don't have to pre-string these in any way, which is so magical. Instead, we're just keeping our loop on our hook as if we were going to keep crocheting. Then we just pop a bead onto the hook. Now we're going to just work a basic single crochet in our next stitch. So I'm inserting my hook, pulling up a loop as I would with a single crochet, and now I'm yarning over and pulling through like a typical single crochet. I'm just working through a bead as I go. And now that bead is attached to my tree. From here, I just want to continue. That counted as my 1 stitch there, so I'm going to continue in half double crochet. And one of the ways that I have found it effective to space my beads evenly or semi-evenly on the tree is to put 1 bead on one side of my round and then a second bead opposite it. So then in a couple rounds I might do 1 bead over here and a second one opposite it over here. So I have worked 2 more stitches here. I'm about opposite the bead that I just added, so I'm going to pop another one onto my hook and work that single crochet in the next stitch, going right through my bead as I finish it. And now we are back to the beginning of the round, and we've got 2 beads added. It's pretty cool, isn't it? This is an increase round, so in every other round we are going to be increasing, and increasing is just what we did before, where we put 2 stitches instead of 1. So in the very first stitch of this round I'm going to work 2 half double crochet, 1 and 2. And then I want to put my stitch marker back here in the first stitch of the round. That's going to remind me where we started. Now I need to work 2 stitches where I'm not increasing, I'm just half double crocheting in each stitch. When you get to a bead like this, you're just going to work into your top loops just like this, as if the bead wasn't there. So that's 2 half double crochet, which means it's time to increase again. So in my next stitch, I want to put 2 stitches where there was previously 1. So that just happens to be on the side of this bead. So that looks like one half double crochet in there, and then a second one in the same stitch. And now we should have 2 stitches left in this round, and we're just going to put one half double crochet in each of them. There we go. Okay, so we've worked all the way around, and at this point you should have 8 half double crochet. So after an increase round, we're always going to work around even, which means a round where we're not increasing at all, we're just half double crocheting in each stitch. I moved my stitch marker out of that stitch just so I can work into it, and now I'm going to replace it in that new first stitch of the round. And then we're just going to put 1 stitch in each stitch around. At the end of round 5, you should still have 8 stitches because we didn't increase at all. But the next round, round 6, we do want to increase again by 2 stitches. So we're going to increase once at the beginning of the round and then once over here opposite our first increase. To begin round 6, we're going to put 2 half double crochet in our first stitch and put that stitch marker back into my first stitch. And then we're now going to work 3 stitches, so you can see a pattern developing here. Every increase round, we're working 1 more stitch between our increases. So previously we did 2 stitches in between, and now in this round we're working 3 stitches in between. So we have our increase here, and then 1, 2, 3, which means we're now ready to increase again, putting 2 stitches into that 1 stitch. 1 and 2. And at this point, I am going to put a second stitch marker in, and this is just so that I don't have to keep track of counting between my increases. So this stitch marker is indicating where I'm going to do my second increase on my increase rounds. So every other round, we're going to increase by 2, and in those places, we're always going to do it in the first stitch of the round and then where the second stitch marker is placed. Now there should be 3 stitches left to work in the round, and I'm just putting a half double crochet in each of them. At the end of round 6, you should now have 10 stitches, and round 7 is just going to be worked even around, not adding any new stitches. So when possible, I prefer to add my beads in my working even rounds. It's just kind of a nice way to think of it, and it gives me a bit of a cadence to follow. That doesn't mean you can't add a bead in an increase round though, if you see an opportunity for a bead and it would look good with the other beads that you have placed. So I'm going to add 2 more beads in this round, and at this point I want them to be sort of in a different column than my first 2 beads. So these beads are here. I don't really want to put another bead directly below it. Instead, I kind of want a bead in between where these are on that side and then in between on this side. So I'll probably put one right at the very end of this round. And so I'm just half double crocheting in each of these stitches until I get to the other side of the round about where this orange stitch marker is. This will be a good spot for a bead. So I'm going to pop this stitch marker out just to make space to work into the next stitch, and then I'm putting that bead on my hook and working my single crochet right through the bead. And then I'm just gonna put that stitch marker back in, because on my next round that will indicate where I'm going to increase. From here we can just half double crochet in each stitch. If you're not adding any beads on this round, you can just keep working in half double crochet stitches. But if you do want to add one more bead like I do at the very end of the round, you can pop one on your hook and then finish the round with a single crochet just going through the bead. At this point you should have 10 stitches because we didn't increase at all. But in our next round, we are going to increase. So I removed my stitch marker because I want to put 2 half double crochet in that stitch, 1 and 2. And even though a bead preceded that, that's okay. We're just going to put our stitch marker right here in the top of that first stitch. You can tell it's just touching the bead, but nothing is really different about that stitch there. And because I have my orange stitch marker that indicates where I want to increase, I don't actually need to do any counting now. If you don't have a stitch marker there, all you need to know is that you're going to work 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches between your increases this time. So I like to put a stitch marker there just because it makes this a little bit more relaxing to me if I don't have to count between my increases. Instead, I'm just looking for that stitch marker. And it's a bit of a mile marker to let me know what to do. So in this stitch, I'm going to put 1 and 2. And I'm going to replace my stitch marker into my first of those stitches, so that will let me know where to increase again later. And then I'm going to half double crochet in each stitch that remains in this round. From here, we're just going to continue in this pattern until you have the height of tree that you want. So I have just worked an increase round, which means my next round, I'm just half double crocheting in each stitch around. Then the next round, I'm going to put an increase right here at my first marker and my second marker, and in every other round I'm increasing by 2 stitches. And then as we crochet, we're just adding beads where we think they will look good. It's a bit like decorating a Christmas tree where you want the ornaments fairly evenly spaced, but not perfect. We're not going for exact mathematical perfection here because we do want something that feels organic and dynamic, and that's part of the beauty of being handmade. When it's time to determine if you're finished with your tree height, I suggest actually trying it on your cone rather than trying to measure the height of the tree. And that's because a little bit of your tree top may go unfilled with the cone. You can see here mine's floppy because the cone is actually only reaching to about right here. So my crocheted section is a couple inches longer than the cone, which creates the nicest taper here, but it also means I need to have the cone to stick it inside and truly measure how tall I want my tree to be. So when I'm content with how that's fitting and the number of rounds that I have, I'm ready to fasten off, and I want to show you how we're going to taper our round here so we don't just end abruptly and have a little stair step at the end of our spiral. You'll want to work until the end of a round, so I've reached my stitch marker here, and that's just going to create the most consistent spiral because we've completed a full round. And now we're going to work just past that stitch marker in order to taper this off. I've worked my last half double crochet in the last stitch of this round, and now I'm going to go to a slightly shorter stitch, which is a single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet in the next 2 stitches. And the point here is just that these are a little bit shorter, so we're going incrementally down. Now after we've done 2 single crochets, we're going to do 2 slip stitches, which are even shorter than single crochets. You could keep going in slip stitches if you want to, but I found that 2 works pretty well. And now I can cut my yarn tail off and pull it through this loop. And now I have officially fastened off, and you can see here, this sort of blends in the bottom of the tree. You won't be able to see it once the cone is in. So we just have these tails here that we want to use a tapestry needle to weave in. I'm going to come around and do most of my weaving in on the inside of my tree so that I don't create any noticeable texture changes on the outside of the tree. And I'm guessing that our trees are not going to be handled or thrown around like a football. So probably just doing a very basic job of weaving in the yarn tails is all we need. Mostly because these trees are going to be decorations, not likely washed. not likely handled a ton. So for that reason, I'm also okay with just not weaving in the yarn tail from our initial magic ring. I'm just going to leave it in the top there and tuck it in with my styrofoam cone. Once you understand the concepts of how to make these trees, there is just unlimited potential of yarn and bead combinations. So you can find plenty of beads on Amazon that have a little bit larger holes. There's colorful beads and wooden beads, and you just always want to make sure that the hole is big enough that you can fit a hook through it, and then you can go to town. I've experimented on this with pony beads, which are the typical craft bead you can find in any big box craft store in the kids section, and they make these adorable little decorated trees. And I found that if you use semi-transparent pony beads like I'm doing here, a little bit of light can shine through. So it's really cool to just forego the styrofoam cone altogether and instead pop a little strand of battery operated lights inside your tree, because then the bulbs or the beads can literally glow in your Christmas scene. I'd love for you to leave a comment below with the type of beads that you're using, what color, what size, and let everyone know how you're going to be using your bead trees. I think there's so many playful uses of these, including my next project, which is going to be to make some for Valentine's Day. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for lots more free patterns and easy tutorials just like this. Thanks for watching and happy crocheting!